So the BvS thesis is actually proving to be very difficult because BvS is highly layered. For any one layer peeled back, you get two more layers that need to be interpreted. But this could be a good thing, as it means though I have no grand overarching perspective on the film, there is plenty to talk about anyway, and so I've decided to devote a large portion of this channel to exploring those layers, getting down into the nitty-gritty, marching confidently down each rabbit hole with the full acceptance that these rabbit holes may actually lead nowhere, which is fine because it's the discussion that matters more. So let this video be the first in a series that will serve as a sort of open discussion revolving around the themes and motifs in BvS. There are a lot of important messages in the movie that in my view are far more important than Batman's kill count. In spite of these insipid critiques, it's been great to see plenty of thoughtful and well-rounded analyses done on BvS. So in an effort to contribute and encourage more relevant and honest discussion around the movie, I will be making multiple series simultaneously such that each series focuses on one aspect that I feel is important. For example, this first video will be in the BvS in Politics series. Another series will be BvS in Philosophy, etc. So of course there will be overlap as the categories will not be mutually exclusive, but it's the best way I can think to organize my thoughts around the movie. And in true YouTube fashion, I have a Patreon account, and if you find what I say valuable and you have the means to do so, consider contributing to my effort by becoming a patron. And if you have something to say, please do so in the comments below. Drones have a special place in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. What in Man of Steel amounted to a short scene attached towards the end of the movie focusing on drone use as a spying tool.
Are you effing stupid?
It's one of your surveillance drones.
That's a $12 million piece of hardware.
Gets developed into a fleshed-out pointed critique on the CIA drone program in BvS. Even more reflective of the grim nature of American conduct and overseas influence.
Python, we have lost our asset on the ground. Repeat, we have lost our asset on the ground.
There's still a civilian in the compound. We'll extract her.
Negative. RPA to engage. Stand down and get black.
Well, there'll be friendlies in the blast zone, so call off the goddamn drone.
Stand down is an order.
The CIA drone program, for any that do not know, refers mainly to the CIA's authority to use drone strikes as a counterterrorism measure beginning in 2004.
I didn't know.
Ignorance is not the same as innocence, Miss Lane.
The effort began under the Bush Jr. administration in response to the 9/11 attacks in the so-called War on Terror. These strikes were conducted in places like Pakistan, Yemen, Libya, and Somalia. The fact that these drones are unmanned means there is zero threat for the drone operator and extreme threat for those on the ground in the area that the drone is targeting. Three major points of critique with these drone strikes are their tendency for radicalizing even more enemies at home and abroad, their tendency for killing innocent civilians and sometimes U.S. citizens, and further the questionable process by which a casualty is categorized as militant or non-militant. For instance, here is a diagram showing the civilian casualty rate. This is an alarming set of numbers for a society that prides itself on being a beacon of hope for the modern world. What does standing for the American flag or uttering the words "with liberty and justice for all" mean in a society that ultimately turns a blind eye to their own government's abhorrent policies, such that few are actually held accountable? The alarming number of civilian casualties might seem to some a cold, hard reality of war that we just have to accept, and yet Batman v Superman warns against the inhumane consequences of what such a complacent attitude can cost. Had Superman not shown up, the missile headed towards the village in Nairobi would have wiped out everyone there, including non-militant civilians, all the women and mothers in the village. The most terrifying part of this scene for me is how casual the entire process was for the man controlling the drone, and for the CIA to make the decision despite knowing there were friendlies on the ground. The extreme physical disconnect between the lives on the ground and drone operators begets an emotional one. Perhaps on a psychological level, the choice to strike Nairobi or to strike anywhere is made much easier given the video game-like setup. It's also disconnected from the reality on the ground. We see forces on the ground willing to go in to minimize civilian casualties, and yet the CIA prefers the quicker method. Having soldiers on the ground certainly puts our own soldiers at risk, but not having that risk also puts us in a state of an extreme imbalance of power that, when coupled with the civilian casualties, has been used to radicalize more individuals, creating an even more problematic state. As alarming as the civilian casualty rate is, things get worse as we dig deeper to understand the process of categorizing a casualty as militant or civilian. According to some sources, under the Obama administration, any male of military age within a strike zone is considered to be a terrorist unless proven otherwise. This is the exact opposite of what our justice system claims to uphold. So the actual civilian casualty rate has been argued to be much larger than what the official numbers reflect. What I love most about the scene is how it actually puts a human face on the potential civilian casualties, the friendlies, which could only be so easily killed due to the disconnect between entities on the ground and entities in the sky. What's also interesting is that the CIA essentially plays judge, jury, and executioner the same way Batman was perceived to be, and I would say was certainly on the brink of becoming. It is in this sense, and others which will be explored in later videos, that I believe from a political perspective, Batman represents an aspect of American identity. On one hand, America is meant to be the beacon of hope for the modern world, much like Superman became. On the other hand, we simultaneously engage in ugly, morally bankrupt policies at home and abroad, much like Batman was becoming. Perhaps Superman and Batman represent the split personalities of America, grappling with itself to form a balanced whole. In any case, Batman certainly reflects American complacency and nihilism with regard to post-9/11 domestic and foreign policy.
New rules.
We're criminals, Alfred. We've always been criminals. Nothing's changed.
Oh, yes, it has, sir. Everything's changed. Men fall from the sky. The gods hurl thunderbolts. Innocents die. That's how it starts. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel.